Hashtag love and peace. A new adaptation of the Trigun manga series has been announced to be created in CGI by Toho Animation, made exclusively for the Crunchyroll streaming service. In light of this recent event, I thought I'd take a look back at the original 1990s anime based on the manga series of the same title. Though from what I know, Trigun Maximum has its own continuity, but that's a topic for another day. If we ever talk about it, which I doubt. One of the main reasons people hold Trigun as an anime series to good memory is because back in the 1990s, anime was not as mainstream as it is today, so people in the West were very limited with the selection of anime shows that they had access to, which is why such shows that did make an appearance, like Cowboy Bebop, had been treasured so deeply into people's memories. Both Cowboy Bebop and Trigun had westernized settings that could more easily appeal to people living in the West, and both had their English dubs made for Adult Swim. Now, do I think Trigun is as good as Cowboy Bebop? I think in terms of storytelling, Cowboy Bebop as an anime series does it better than Trigun as an anime series. But that's not to negate this story in any way whatsoever. This is still a great story. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if people say that Trigun did some things better than Cowboy Bebop. And like Cowboy Bebop, it hooks you in with its unique sci-fi setting. Many regard the English dub of Trigun to be superior to the original version. Not only did people find Johnny on Bosch's performance as the main character quite investing, but also several jokes work better in the English dub. But I'm not here to talk about dub versus sub. I'm here to talk about the quality of Trigun. Or is it pronounced Trigun? I think if it was Trigun, the I would be replaced with a Y. Okay, what is Trigun all about? It's set in the distant future, where humanity has traveled to a distant desert planet, which is then referred to as Gunsmoke. In this hot desert planet with limited resources, despite their best technology, they establish societies similar to the old Wild West. And almost everybody living in Gunsmoke is very violent, and are criminals trying to look out for themselves. However, one man sets out to seek the good in everybody, and try to help people wherever he goes, all to spread a message of love and peace. This man's name is Vash the Stampede, the most wanted criminal on the planet, with a $60 billion double-dollar money reward on his head. I think I got the price right. Even the mere mention of this name is enough to make people run amok, as the name Vash the Stampede is associated with ruined towns. But as it turns out, despite being a very skilled marksman, Vash the Stampede is actually a die-hard pacifist who doesn't want to kill anyone. He just wants people to live in peace, even his enemies. The demolition associated with Vash the Stampede actually comes from the people trying to chase him down. So it's not Vash causing the destruction, he just brings the destruction with him wherever he goes, unfortunately. This destruction has motivated two insurance women to hunt down and locate Vash the Stampede for financial purposes. And they unknowingly come across Vash the Stampede, who doesn't initially reveal his name to them in the first few episodes. And even after they find out that this goofball is Vash the Stampede, Vash would still rather appear as a goofball and play with children and eat donuts. No matter how tough Vash's opposition gets, Vash always tries to find a way to find love and peace between both his enemies and the people he's protecting, even at his own inconvenience at times, as indicated by the many scars on his own body. As the insurance girls, named Merle and Millie, keep following Vash the Stampede around the planet Gunsmoke, they encounter various types of people that need help, new types of enemies, criminals, bounty hunters. They encounter all kinds of criminals, bounty hunters, and even deadlier threats down the line, and Vash and the insurance girls encounter many people that they would regard as friends. Most notably, a priest named Nicholas D. Wolfwood, a gun-wielding priest named Nicholas D. Wolfwood, a giant, cross-shaped gun-wielding priest named Nicholas D. Wolfwood. That's him there. Further down the line in the story, as Vash's brother, Knives Millions, becomes more prevalent and dangerous, Vash's virtues of love, peace, optimism, and pacifism are challenged, and even questioned at times, even by Nicholas Wolfwood, as Vash's virtues are pushed to the limit. As Vash's virtues are deeply challenged, one major question keeps popping up. Is humanity worth saving if they are prone to so much evil?
Having briefly looked at these links down below, I realized I missed a few things about how the show presents itself. The pacing in the first half is mainly episodic, and this may get on people's nerves in regards to patience, but if you wait around a little longer, you'll find this is actually essential for character building, and in the second half of the show, things get pretty intense. The show somehow miraculously has a brilliant balance between its comedic tone and its very serious tone, and it has a very likable side cast. I particularly like Millie Thompson. She's a very funny side character, if you ask me. A very sweet one too. And there's also times to self-reminisce, and also a lot of times to think about deep moral issues and philosophy, all without ham-fisting any morals down your throat, sometimes even just letting the audience think for themselves. And what I find great looking back at it now is that all the side characters and main characters have relationships that grow and they learn from one another. Looking back at the show, it's amazing how the comedy and seriousness can come into play with each other. In fact, there's some scenes where the exact contrast between the seriousness and comedic timing actually works to the storytelling's favor.
What makes the story very fascinating to experience, whether you watch the anime series or read the manga comics, is its main protagonist, and how much his virtues are challenged. Vash is clearly shown as a skilled marksman, and can survive almost pretty much any situation that the planet Gunsmoke has to offer to him. And in this very hostile world, he still chooses to save people. In fact, Vash the Stampede isn't even a regular human. Despite looking about 25, he's actually 150. And no, he's not one of the Dunedain like Aragorn, but he's close enough. Vash is actually what is called, in Trigun, a plant. Isn't that right, Phoenix? Yes, I named my petunia Phoenix. Phoenix the petunia plant, because it comes back after it's wilted. The plant species in Trigun are revealed to be species responsible for human survival in the planet Gunsmoke. Most of them are restrained in these light bulb type devices that are quite large and are installed into some city locations and factories and whatnot, and are used to empower the electricity and other types of power in Gunsmoke. But then you have more mobile plant-like people like Vash and his brother Knives. And as it turns out, Vash and Knives are both practical living weapons. As not only do they have impeccable aiming and a long lifespan and quick reflexes, but both brothers have the ability to summon these supernova-type gun weapons in their arms. Weapons so powerful, they can cause a crater on a nearby moon. So Vash is clearly capable of wiping out all the evildoers in the planet Gunsmoke. And yet, despite being a living weapon, he chooses to save people. A pacifistic living weapon. A living weapon who is pacifistic. You'll notice a big contrast there. And the more you look into Trigun as a story, the more you'll begin to recognize that, and another YouTuber has pointed this out, is that this is a story that likes to explain its themes through contrasts. The potentially deadliest man on the planet happens to be the most peaceful man on the planet. This established criminal is this goofball who likes to play with children and eat donuts. The insurance girls, despite not being as deadly as Vash potentially, have the capacity to be slightly more deadly than Vash since he's a pacifist. The insurance girls at times seem to have more sense than Vash the Stampede. This unstoppable marksman purposely makes himself appear like a complete idiot. But deep down inside, Vash mostly knew what he was doing the whole time, as appearing foolish not only puts his enemies off guard, but also gives the people he's trying to save some hope. We find out later down the line that Vash is a vastly more serious person than he appears to be. Beneath that happy-go-lucky facade is someone who's seen some of the worst things that life has to offer to him. He's seen friends come and go and die, He's seen friends come and go and pass on. Whenever he can, he'll provide wisdom about the bigger issues of life. And he's not afraid to get serious when he wants to be. Although the emphasis on contrast is further emphasized when Wolfwood enters the scene. Here the contrasts are further at play, because compared to Vash, who is a living weapon who chooses to be a pacifist, Wolfwood is a professing man of God, who practically doesn't hesitate to kill his opponents he deems as dangerous to society. This creates a conflicting rift in the friendship between Vash and Wolfwood. Both men have different ambitions but different means to achieve them. And just like Batman Under the Red Hood, this story brings up the tricky subject on whether violent people should be spared or not. From Wolfwood's standpoint, some people have to be killed for the protection of others. But from Vash's standpoint, people deserve to live no matter what they've done. Interestingly enough, the show isn't particularly one-sided in terms of how it presents these morals. The show and the story presents both sides of the argument. But, of course, deep down in our conscience, we know that murder is wrong. But Vash's optimism towards humanity is questioned and even challenged. Wolfwood himself challenges Vash into thinking if life is worth sparing if there are some people who are just going to continue killing others. And when you find out both of these men's backstories, their standpoints seem to make sense, at least in how they view the world. And even though for the most part Vash's viewpoint wins the day, because it sees the hope of the good in all people, Vash still learns some things from Wolfwood, I think. Maybe it's not always explicitly spoken, but I think Vash and Wolfwood learn something from each other over time. Wolfwood, as well as the insurance girls, learn to value life in the way that Vash does, even if their ways are not always perfect. And whilst Vash the Stampede has failed to be perfect as well, I think Vash is learning to find peace with his troubled past by learning how to carry his cross, just like Wolfwood does. And this kind of symbolism is taken quite literally, as Wolfwood is mostly associated with himself carrying that large cross-shaped gun on his back. So it's a fascinating dynamic. A living weapon who chooses not to kill, and a professing man of God who almost has no problem to kill. A living weapon who doesn't kill, and a man of God who does kill. A pacifist who doesn't explicitly talk about God and religion that much. And a priest who believes in God and is raising money for an orphanage, in full fairness, who smokes and shoots guns at people. So, let me break this down. Trigun is essentially Frank Herbert's Dune if Arrakis had more of a Wild West saloon aesthetic. Paul Atreides was a goofball trying to be more like Clint Eastwood. And it also happened to feature Spike Spiegel if he saw the light in the Blues Brothers and raised funds for an orphanage.
You do realize there's a general consensus in the Cowboy Bebop fanbase that I affiliate myself more with traditional Judaism, right?
It's close enough. Now those thematics are very intriguing in and of themselves. All that is coated with some great action set pieces, a lot of wacky comedy, mainly stemming from Vash's antics, as well as a reoccurring cat in the backdrop. And it's not afraid to get serious, emotional, and thought-provoking when it wants to be. And with all that said, the Trigun as an anime series does have its flaws, and this is why I consider Cowboy Bebop as an anime series to be better than Trigun as an anime series. The animation style for Trigun is dated, and that seems very odd because Cowboy Bebop and Trigun came out at approximately the same time period in the 1990s. And if you look pretty closely, both of them have almost the same kind of televised animation, where it's clearly not as big a budget as some major mainstream anime films at that time. But I've noticed in Trigun, there's a few scenes where I thought, yeah, those animations and those scenes could have done with a few more frames in between other frames just to make it a bit more smooth. It comes across as a bit rigid at times. Whereas in Cowboy Bebop, they do allow some compromise in adding in just a few more frames and even a few shots where it looks more glamorous and more beautiful than it has any right to be for the standard of a television show at that time. I suppose for the most part, a lot of people can be fine with the way Trigun is presented visually, because visually speaking, it still represents the manga series quite well, and is still completely consistent with the subject matter and the type of storytelling that it has, whilst there could have been some time taken into adding just a few more frames in between other movements. It still works fine. And there's another reason why I consider Cowboy Bebop to be a superior anime series compared to Trigun, and that's the ending. Now, don't get me wrong, Trigun's ending is by no means terrible. Trigun does not have a awful Game of Thrones type ending where the ending failed to meet the expectations met throughout the story. No, the climax of the Trigun anime series does meet the expectations that were built up throughout the story, and it does offer us a pretty intense final battle. I just think that the resolution of that ending could have been a bit longer, because once the climax happens, we get the resolution and it just ends. And I felt, I think it could have been just a little bit longer. Just a bit more time to reflect on the journey that Vash has been through. Cowboy Bebop's resolution, on the other hand, was vastly more impactful. In fact, I'd even say that Cowboy Bebop's resolution is one of the most striking in television history. That finale properly ended with a bang. But it also made the audience feel something that they'd carry for the rest of their lives. With Trigun, not so much, but it still ends off on an optimistic high note. So, overall, do I recommend Trigun? Yes, I do. You can get the whole 90 series collection on DVD, and, if you have time to spare, Trigun Badlands Rumble is quite a fun movie to watch. The story of Badlands Rumble is not as good as some of the other story elements from the Trigun series, but it is a fun film if you're in the mood, with some good action set pieces. And if you ask me, Trigun Badlands Rumble visually represents Trigun vastly better, especially if you get it on Blu-ray, which, as far as I'm aware, is the only option on Amazon. But what do you think about Trigun the series? Do you think Trigun the anime series still stands up today, even with bigger mainstream anime series like Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer? Do you think Trigun is better than Cowboy Bebop or not? Do you think Trigun is outdated? Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know if you're looking forward to this new adaptation of Trigun up and coming. Scotchmeyer, signing out. And even after they find out... Darn it, Spike. So, let me get this straight. This story is... It's not moving that stupid thing. Though, from what I know, Trigun Maximoff... Maximoff? Though, from what I know, Trigun Maximum